unfortunately, with the congressman's schedule, we were unfortunately not able to have him with us, but the office has been more than kind to us to allow us to have two members of their office speak to everyone here. We have Marlon Dubuisson, who's the outreach director, and then Molly Cole, who's the senior LA, who deals with the foreign affairs, defense, veteran affairs, homeland security, intelligence, and judiciary issues that the congressman has to deal with during his term. I just wanted to give people, the students, a little bit of at least the congressman's assignments. Not too much of his background since he's not here, but at least they know what committees he's on and where where Molly kind of fits into that. And so Congressman Connolly is serving his sixth term in the U.S. House of Representatives for Virginia's 11th district. That includes my county, Fairfax County, Prince William County, City of Fairfax, and that's all in Northern Virginia. Prior to that, he was worked at the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors for the past 14 years, and then 5 years as chairman. He serves on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. And in addition to those committee assignments, he's a member of the New Democratic Coalition, chair of the Smart Contracting Caucus, co-chair of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Caucus, co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on U.S.-Turkey Relations and Turkish Americans, co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on Korea, Congressional Caucus on Georgia, and on the Congressional Caucus on Taiwan. And he is, I believe this is his new role for him for this coming year, he's going to be the chairman of the U.S. delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. That is an affiliate organization of NATO and consists of more than 250 delegates from the parliaments and legislative bodies of all of the alliance's 29 member states. And has head of that delegation, Mr. Connolly, will set the agenda for interaction with the Assembly on behalf of the U.S. Congress and work in a bipartisan manner to support the values of the Transatlantic Alliance and strengthen congressional commitment to NATO. For Ms. Cole's part, prior to serving on the Hill, she managed global health and HIV/AIDS public affairs at the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. Throughout her career, she has also spent time at the State Department, the World Bank, an international NGO called Mothers to Mothers, and the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Molly has lived overseas in South Africa, Malawi, and Ethiopia, and worked abroad in 9 countries. She is a double graduate at the University of Virginia, where she received her bachelor's degree in sociology and African American studies, and her master's of public policy degree. So thank you so much for both of you for being here with us. And if you could at least introduce yourselves as well to our students, and if you have some remarks, that'd be great to start off.
Sure, I can start, and then Marlon, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself as well. So hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here with you today. Thank you for letting us fill in for Mr. Connolly. I know he's sorry that he can't join you today, but we always enjoy meeting with students, and especially I know many of you are our own constituents, so it's really a pleasure to get the opportunity to talk to you about the work that we do every day and hopefully inspire you to get involved in your own community in whatever way you see fit. I know public service is really important to both Marlon and me and really everyone who works in our office. So we love to share our passion for that with the young people in our lives. So we look forward to answering any questions you have about that. But just to say a little bit more about Mr. Connolly's background, as Lawrence said, he's a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he's been on the Foreign Affairs Committee ever since he joined Congress in 2009. It's a really big passion for him. He actually used to serve as a staffer, like Marlon and I, on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the 1980s for about 10 years. And so he's been covering foreign affairs for a long time, and has a great historical mind and passion for history and sort of the course of international relations. So I learn a lot from him all the time. He's also a co-chair of the Turkey Caucus in Congress. And as Lawrence was saying, he is a he actually previously was the head of the US delegation to NATO's Parliamentary Assembly. And just recently, last month, he was elected president of the entire NATO Parliamentary Assembly. So in that role, he's not just in charge of the US delegation, but of all of the 29 NATO countries. And it's a 2-year presidency. So he really has a long period of time to, put his imprint on the organization, and it's something he's been preparing for a while, and is taking very seriously. He sort of has two main priorities in that capacity that he's starting out with. One is to really look at how the international power distribution has changed recently, and how NATO as an organization needs to adapt to that. So when we say that, the international power distribution, what we're really talking about is how China has really been increasing its aggression, not just militarily, but also in terms of, interfering in democratic governance, and, more sort of soft power approaches, like how they might try to convince Americans through think tanks that they may have, that like the human rights situation in China may not be as bad as they think. And so Mr. Connolly will try to help NATO adapt to China's rise and how China is being more aggressive on the world stage, while continuing to respond to Russia's aggression, which has long been a part of NATO's strategic posture. One of the other main things that he'll be prioritizing in this new role is trying to reaffirm NATO's commitment to shared values. NATO is a military alliance. It's been around for 70 years, and most people think of it as, in terms of the Article 5 commitment, which is that an attack on one is an attack on all. And, we invoked this after 9/11, and a bunch of our NATO allies joined us in the war in Afghanistan, invoking the Article 5 commitment. But NATO is also a political alliance, and that means that the NATO countries are democracies with shared values, shared commitments to human rights and democratic governance. And unfortunately, in recent years, we've seen a real, what we call democratic backsliding, or countries that purport to be democracies but have really shown issues with freedom of speech, or closing democratic space, like really like violent clampdowns on protests, and poor election integrity, where people don't feel that their vote is actually being counted as they cast it, where judges are not necessarily seen as being impartial. And so it's Mr. Connolly's view, and the view of many who were involved in NATO's sort of political identity, that those values, that commitment to democracy, is really important. It's not just lip service, it's important to the integrity of NATO. And if a country doesn't continue to adhere to those democratic values, it actually starts to degrade the security of the alliance. And we've seen this, unfortunately, both within some NATO countries themselves, but also within some countries that want to join NATO, some NATO aspirant countries, and other countries that NATO partners with. So that's going to be another large focus of his presidency over the next 2 years for NATO's Parliamentary Assembly. So that's on the Mr. Connolly front. On my front, I can just tell you a little bit about myself. Lawrence gave a great introduction. And so I've been with Mr. Connolly for a little more than 4 years now. And I mainly cover his foreign affairs work. He's on two committees, the Foreign Affairs Committee and the Oversight and Reform Committee. And so because he's on the Foreign Affairs Committee, that I would say is probably 60% of the work that I do. But members' personal offices in the House are pretty small. We have a relatively small staff and only 4 legislative staffers. So between the 4 of us, we have to cover everything under the sun. And so that's why he had that list of other issue areas that I cover. And that definitely takes up quite a bit of time as well. And prior to my time on the Hill, I served for 3 years at our US Agency for International Development, which I hope you guys are familiar with. It's kind of part of the State Department, but kind of a separate agency that handles our US foreign assistance. And I worked in our Global Health Bureau. So in that job, I was able to travel and actually live abroad a little bit working at some of our embassies and implementing our global health programming and our HIV and AIDS programming in particular. So mostly in sub-Saharan Africa.
Was that USAID?
Yeah, USAID. And before that, I was, in grad school getting my public policy degree, and I had some internships or some fellowships where I lived abroad in South Africa and worked at an NGO, worked at a think tank for a little bit, worked at the World Bank for a little bit. So I've got some experience in different types of international organizations, but most of them are sort of under the global health umbrella, or I was working in a global health capacity. And I loved all that work. I'm very passionate about it, but I decided that I wanted to work on sort of broader US foreign policy and not just the international development space. And so that's why I made that transition from sort of that part of my career to working on the Hill and working for Mr. Connolly. And I've absolutely loved it. It's been everything I hoped it would be. So I'll leave my introduction there, let Marlon make some remarks, but I just want to say that we're so happy to be here, and we're really an open book and happy to answer any questions that you all have, either about, Mr. Connolly's roles, his positions, or our experience and sort of how we got here.
And I'll just be brief with my introduction. Well, my name is Marlon Dubuisson. I'm Congressman Connolly's Outreach Director. I know a number of you students are from the Northern Virginia, Fairfax County area. So I'm actually a product of Fairfax County. I went to South County High School, South County Secondary School at the time. So I was actually there from middle school through high school. Then I went to Christopher Newport University in Newport News, Virginia. And then I went and got my master's in public policy at George Mason University. And I've been with Congressman Connolly since 2017. And I like to tell everyone I've had my hands in just about every single pot. I started out as an intern in the district office, and then I split my time as an intern in the district office and was Molly's intern for a little bit on the Hill. And Molly actually took me to my first hearing. So it comes full circle now. And after that, I was on the congressman's re-election campaign in 2018 as his campaign deputy, transitioned into outreach as his Prince William outreach representative to end 2018 and start 2019, and then made the transition into outreach director earlier this year, January 2020. And then starting next month, I'll be transitioning into his district director. So again, coming full circle as starting as an intern and then coming back to the district office. But as Molly stated, the congressman's many roles on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Growing up in Fairfax County, Congressman Connolly was everywhere. So I've known of Congressman Connolly since high school. He was the chairman of the Board of County Supervisors, as Lawrence stated, and he was also Providence District Supervisor. But outside of that, what people don't see as much as he was also the president of his civic association and the Fairfax Federation. So his desire and his love for community outreach and community support and just giving back wherever he can really stems deeply just from his neighborhood roots. And he really gives that that vibe and that effort and that push back into the district office. And so with our outreach, we love reaching out to anyone and everyone, sitting down with students, different federations, different groups and organizations. So if you're looking to get involved, at the high school level, if you wanted to get involved in an internship or just volunteer work, we're happy to put you in contact with other groups around us. But once you get to college, and if you're looking for an internship, please use myself and Lawrence, please use me as a resource, so for how you can get your foot in the door and get involved in this civic process. But, again, thank you so much for having us join you this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to any questions you might have.
Thank you to the both of you, and yeah, I think we Marlon kind of one I want to say is also I'm a product of Fairfax County. I went to Falls Church High School right here, so and then I've been here. Yeah, Jerry Connolly is a household name. I mean, for decades around here. But Marlon had kind of alluded to it, but because we have high school students, the question, and I don't know, I'm asking you guys to tap into your memory banks here, but were there certain things that you did in high school in terms of maybe organizations you're a part of, or activities, or classes that you might have focused on that maybe kind of help you in this your career path, or like were there kind of significant moments? I think that might be helpful for some here are seniors and maybe applying to college soon, but I just I mean there's things that might be relevant for all of them, but can you maybe look back and talk about what happened during high school, just any extracurricular activities you might have done even in your early college years that have kind of molded who you are now and your professional profiles?
Sure. So there's two organizations that I participated in and two classes that immediately come to mind for what I think might be helpful to pass on. For the two classes, one is somewhat obvious, just the government class, but I remember my AP government class my senior year was one of my hardest classes, and I hated the teacher at the time because it was so time consuming, but I came away from that class with a real rigorous understanding of the three branches of the federal government. And I can't tell you how many people will call our office and not understand that something that the president is doing is like a different branch of government and a different party than what Congress is doing, or certainly that there are two houses of Congress, the House and the Senate. So certainly really paying attention during your government class and understanding the checks and balances process. That's really an important part of our job, especially when there's a different party in power in the executive versus the legislative branch, is the power of oversight. And that's something that the Democratic Party has definitely been exercising over the last 4 years during the Trump administration. So pay attention in your government class. The other class that I loved, and I think it was pretty unique at our school, but I would just ask everyone to look out for it if you have an opportunity at your schools. We had a leadership and diversity class that might be more trendy nowadays, but certainly was not very common 15 years ago. And it was a wonderful class where we, had political debates. We talked about, not just racial diversity, but all different kinds of diversity, and, why it was important to have diverse voices in different organizations. And it was, I called it my hacky sack class, because it was it felt like you were on a college campus, just this free and open exchange of ideas. But it was in high school. So if you don't have a class like that, I would urge you to lobby your administrations to get one. And then two of the organizations that I participated in, one was called Leadership Arlington Youth Program. And I think Fairfax, and I know Prince William has a similar program. I'm not sure if they're for high school students or maybe young professionals as well. But for ours, it was a high school student program where you were paired with a professional who also works in Arlington, and got to sort of shadow them and see the kind of work that they did. So I remember I was shadowing someone who worked at the Pentagon and got to go to work with them for the day and see the kinds of things they worked on. But it was also just a way to get young people interested in their local communities. I think I certainly felt this way growing up in the area. I didn't grow up in Fairfax, but I grew up in Arlington. That there's sort of a big allure of the rest of the world and global issues and even federal issues, but sometimes local and community issues seem sort of less interesting in some way. And I don't think that's true at all. In fact, I think it's the opposite, that you can have a much bigger impact on the local level than if you're, focused entirely on international issues, like says the foreign affairs expert. So I would just encourage you guys to really pay attention to those kinds of opportunities to get involved at the local level, because that's really where you can have the most impact. And then the one other organization that came to mind, I can't remember what it was called. It might have been like the Key Society or National Honor Society or something like that, but it was just a volunteer organization. And it was one of the first sort of organized volunteering that I did, because I think there was like an hours component that, if you reached a certain number of hours, then you got some certificate or something. And, when you put an award next to something, then some people like me are just going to automatically go for that. So, so I fully admit that, like, it started out by just going for the certificate, but then I started volunteering at our local like senior center or a retirement community, playing bingo with the residents there. And it was so much fun. And I like went with my friends and we like befriended this table of old men that like we would each sit with them and play with them. And like I ended up doing it for years after I like exceeded the hour component, just because it was so rewarding. And I think you often find that with volunteer experience, that like maybe when you start out, it's because you're forced to do it, or your parents are asking you to do it, or you kind of begrudgingly get involved. But once you get into a regular routine, then you really see how impactful and rewarding it can be. And then you sort of want to do it just for its own intrinsic value and not because someone is telling you to do it. And you learn so much from it too. So I think you guys are already off to the right start in being involved in a program like this, but I just encourage you to keep it up.
Thank you. Marlon, do you have any defining high school activities and moments?
Yeah, like Molly said, AP Gov was, it was a tough course, but it was an essential course in, I think, the path that we both chose to take as a career. But in college, I was actually a marketing major. So I did DECA and FBLA in high school, but I was a marketing major and a political science minor in college. And it was an interesting mix because in one aspect, you're, finding ways to, pitch an item or a different theme to a certain demographic or group. Did I freeze?
I think I don't know, that froze up. Oh. Sorry.
Am I good? Oh, okay.
I think you're good now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, with my marketing major, it's a different demographic that you're pitching to, but then also in the same breath, when you're a political science minor, you're doing the same thing. So, with public speaking, you'll always get nervous when you go speak, no matter what, especially, I'm the outreach guy. So I'm speaking to anyone and everyone, but if you find that you're prepared, your confidence is that much higher. If you find that you're prepared, the way you're articulating yourself is that much higher as well. So being a marketing major and being a political science minor, as well as doing DECA and FBLA in high school, the practicing public speaking, but also practicing the preparation before you public speak, did wonders for me. So that's a good pathway if you're looking to get into anything community oriented, where you're not only leading but trying to present something, change minds, change hearts going forward.
Thank you. And one question each, particular for your positions that I wanted to ask, but also for the students, if you guys want to start putting questions onto the chat, or any of the participants, if you have questions, please start so I can start organizing them there. But I'm going to start with you, Marlon, first this time. But it's interesting to hear from you that you have this particular experience of like Congressman Connolly, or I should say Connolly as a candidate and Connolly as the congressman. So I mean, what were the difference between like your campaign work life and versus now your like Hill work life, and do you have a favorite? I mean, did you one over the other? I like to kind of hear the kind of similarities, differences for those for you.
With the campaign, especially if you have an opponent, you have to, again, different demographics of who you're speaking to, target audiences of different, platforms. So you might be reaching larger groups with one message or smaller groups with another, and depending on the message, it's how often you're trying to get it out. With outreach, you kind of strike the same chord, many times across the same platform, and you enhance your message, each time. You definitely don't leave anyone out when you're doing outreach, on the official side. And so I think I would say I like the official side better, just because it's more structured, but it's also, you can also be more flexible with, your approach and things.
Thank you. And Molly, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this, because especially being, so I mean, I should tell, preface this with the students, when it comes to, I would say with Molly's position, she is basically the congressman's research, research and comes up in terms of his foreign, when it comes to foreign policy positions, or or if he needs to know something, Molly's the go-to person to kind of give him what he needs on a day-to-day basis. I know this through my my previous work at the Turkish Coalition of America. So but so I kind of have to ask, at least what at least to the extent you can, about the new CATSA sanctions on Turkey, and that just that just happened on Monday. Essentially, I guess today is kind of when it kind of coming out, or I think over the weekend was spoken about. But like, I mean, maybe the congressman's positions on that, or how just like to kind of hear where that might be going.
Sure. So are the students familiar with what CATSA is?
I think that might help if you can give them
Okay, I can give a little bit of background. So I think it was 2017, Congress passed the most sweeping sanctions package that they have ever passed, I think. Sorry, my cat is trying to say hello as well. So CATSA stands for the Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. And there are sanctions against Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And one of the groups of sanctions against Russia has to do with countries or anyone who purchases defense items from Russia. And as you may know, Turkey has purchased a missile defense system from Russia called the S-400. And Turkey had been telegraphing that they were going to do this for a while. It's been years in the making. And Turkey's a NATO ally, and the United States and other NATO allies had been urging Turkey not to purchase that missile defense system from Russia because it prevents national security challenges for not only the United States, but the rest of NATO, and also makes Turkey eligible to be sanctioned by the United States, which is not something that the United States wants to do. But in order, the sanctions under that bill, under CATSA, are mandatory. So we require that anyone who purchases defense articles from Russia be sanctioned. It's not like up to the discretion of an administration. On top of those mandatory sanctions, in this most recent National Defense Authorization Act, which is possibly going to be passed this week, still under negotiation, Congress is is passing an additional mandate that says the administration must sanction Turkey specifically due to its purchase of the S-400 system within 30 days, which is a pretty extraordinary step. So there's a lot of support on a bipartisan basis in Congress that Turkey needs to be sanctioned for the purchase of that system. And Mr. Connolly supports it as well. There's a bill called the PACT Act that also would have required those sanctions, and he's a co-sponsor of that bill and supported its passage in the House. So, you know, Mr. Connolly obviously believes in U.S.-Turkey relations and the important strategic component there, but this is it's an unfortunate circumstance that Turkey's insisted on purchasing that missile defense system. And the hope is that, you know, a sanction, if you guys aren't familiar, it's a type of punishment. You can sanction someone by, you know, imposing asset freezes. So making an individual or an organization not have access to the international financial system and money that they may have in international bank accounts. You can sanction someone with visa bans and not allowing them to travel to the United States or elsewhere. And so these sanctions are specifically targeted at the Turkish agency that carried out the purchase of the S-400. So the hope is that when the sanctions are implemented, it will cause Turkey to change its mind. And so we'll have to see how they respond.
Yeah, I think, yeah, like you said, I think it's been 3 years in the making. So it just, it was, it was about to happen, I guess, at some point. But, and so we do have some questions that they are much lighter than what I had asked. But
can I follow up on this question, Molly, on the missile system? So what's the expectation that the hope is that Turkey will change its mind about buying the S-400 missiles and return them, or is that the expectation?
I can't say what the expectation is, but that's certainly the point of sanctions, is to try to change behavior. You know, it's not just an effort to punish Turkey for no reason or in perpetuity. The hope is that they change their behavior, and in this case, that means you know, not going through with the purchase of the S-400 system and sort of returning to NATO's security apparatus.
Because I think, you know, there was a thing that they made about well, also I think there was, you know, they somehow tied in the delay in the F-35 program, at least in Turkey's idea, Turkey's rationale about buying the missiles, even though, yeah, so maybe there's, you know, concession about bringing them back to that program that might stop them from, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's part of the discussions. Yeah.
My personal expectation, observation is that unfortunately, the more Turkey is, you know, the sanctions are just gonna push Turkey to be even more extreme. Maybe like a carrot would work more right now in Turkey, like to include Turkey in the F-35 program, or something else in return for giving up that S-400. But if just sanctions come along, I think it's just going to have the reverse impact.
Well, we'll have to see.
Anyway,
I'm sure the Biden administration will have its own approach to it. So, you know, maybe with a new administration coming in and new discussions underway, we'll see some action on this front.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think Congressman Connolly is in an interesting position, especially because the concern also is, you know, the EU is, you know, on the drilling is right now also planning on sanctioning Turkey for the Eastern Mediterranean, but it's just like I think Congressman Connolly plays an interesting role in his NATO, presidency in terms of hopefully easing relations in some shape or form in that respect. Demet also had a question kind of generally, you know, what's the, I guess one is, I know different between like COVID pre-COVID, but usually how does a day in the life look at the congressman's office? I mean, I want to add to that a little bit in the sense, like for both of you, do you kind of check the news first, or or like wait till you get to the office and see what's what is the congressman's kind of priorities first, or kind of what are you ones bringing things to the congressman to focus on? But yeah, how does a normal work day look like for you both?
Marlon, you want to start?
Yeah, I could jump in. Lauren, did you want like during COVID or pre-COVID or both? Because it's up in there.
I know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see because I mean, you guys have both been there for a few years, for a few years now. But like, I guess, I mean, what would be the major change since COVID? But I mean, like you normally, I mean, how would it be, and how I guess the question is, how has COVID affected,
Well, I would say definitely as with outreach, I spent a good 6-month stretch doing everything via Zoom, and that means the congressman did as well. We have district work periods where we don't have any votes. So during district weeks, pre-COVID, we'd have various events throughout the district. The congressman would go on a site visit. He would go and meet with, the county executive. He'd have different outreach events throughout the community. But even when they're in session, the congressman lives 25 minutes from Capitol Hill. So if there's an event at 6 p.m. and the last votes were at noon, then he can go from Capitol Hill to go into that, evening ceremony in the district. So it was always, and that's the main thing I actually love about outreach is every day is something different. Every week is something different. Lawrence, we spoke on the phone earlier, and you saw how things change in an hour. So like today I got into office at 8. My last Zoom tonight ends at 9:30. Tomorrow I'm meeting with a school board member. Wednesday and Thursday I'm meeting with different nonprofits in the community. So it's you never know what you're going to get. And that's my favorite part about the job, actually, is every day is something different, so you're never bored. But it's and like you said, or like you asked, do we turn on the news and from there do we react? I think, and I don't mean to downplay other offices at all, but I think something that our office does extremely well is we have, and maybe it's because of how close the district and the Hill offices are, is we have very good working relationships with each other, but we're also very proactive. 2 examples of that is we get constituent casework in the district office. And what we've seen is a lot of people are reaching out to us saying they haven't received their tax refunds. And a lot of small businesses are also reaching out saying they haven't received their small business loans from the SBA. We've seen this increase in cases, and so we've worked with our Hill office to get letters out to the commissioner of the IRS and to the head of the SBA, asking for answers on the delay of processing these loans or processing these tax returns. The IRS issue actually turned into a congressional hearing that the congressman chaired. So that's how the district office and the Hill office work together so well, where it might not be like that in other congressional offices, probably because of where they're located, but also because I like to think Molly and I are pretty good friends, so that might have something to do with it as well.
Thank you, Marlon. And Molly, and how about for you? I mean, especially kind of foreign policy developments as well. I mean, how does it how does that chain of command work, or a chain of kind of news work?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different things to touch on here, but I would say, again, not to downplay other offices or other members, but Mr. Connolly is a very well-read member of Congress. And one of the things that I really appreciate about working for him is that I'm generally not the first person that's going to be telling him that, there's some development in the world. For example, the CATSA sanctions we were talking about earlier, there was a news alert that those went out today. And so whenever something major like that is happening, I'll make a point of, sending him the news alert to make sure he's seen it. 9 times out of 10, he's already read it and he's already familiar with the situation and doesn't really need me to give him much background on it. I do it anyway because on the off chance that he hasn't, it's important for him to know. But he himself reads the Washington Post cover to cover every day, and is constantly, in either reading some news on his phone or has CNN on in the background or whatnot. So I would say me keeping him in the loop on major developments is not the most important role as a staffer. It's more to make sure that he's aware of the dynamics on the Hill and conversations that maybe are happening at the staff level, what's coming down the pike, what hearings we're going to have coming up. So when we talk about what does a typical day for the congressman look like when he's on the Hill, when Congress is in session, it's crazy. And he would tell you that as well. He can have something like 25 engagements in a day. And on top of that, have multiple vote series where he has to go to the floor to vote and come back, or like leave a meeting early or get to a meeting late or leave a hearing or whatnot. So, in those engagements, we have votes on the floor, which are always changing. It's not like they're at a set time and they're going to be then. Like, they're constantly changing based on how long it takes to get through the legislative process. We usually have multiple hearings in his 2 committees. He'll have meetings, and in my portfolio, that often means like meetings with ambassadors or meetings with advocacy groups, meetings with constituents. He will have events where he's giving, public remarks. And for any of these engagements at a staff level, that means, preparing whatever written materials he may need, if there's like a background memo for a meeting or a hearing statement, a line of questioning for a hearing, talking points for an event that he's speaking at. And then, the bread and butter of the work of a congressman is voting. So what bills is he voting on? What are the pros and cons of them? Like, what is our vote recommendation as staff? And a lot of the work that we also do is kind of being a filter. Like, there are, thousands of emails that come in on a daily basis. And, it would be impossible for him to see all of that. And so we have to decide, we're kind of gatekeepers, like what is going to be put on his radar, what really needs to be elevated to him for a decision, what can be handled at the staff level, and what do we as staff even not have time to really manage. And so it's sort of a constant triage based on the congressional schedule, political windows, our constituent needs, his own sort of pet issues and areas that he's passionate about. So I find that a lot of my time is spent when I'm not actually like working on a specific written product. It's this like triage game all day, every day of, okay, I know he has this event coming up in 30 minutes. Does he have everything he needs for that? Okay, this email just came in. Does that need action now, later, like next week? How can I prioritize that? So session days are crazy, but like Marlon said, never a dull moment. I have never been bored, and I really like the variety that comes with the job.
Thank you. And I think it's a good point. I think there's also a difference, and I guess this maybe helps Marlon's role a little bit more, but just at least having, or actually even for both of you, to have a kind of essentially a local congressman. And in a sense, like, if they're, like you said, less than half an hour away from the Hill, so they can have a lot of interaction with their districts and legislative offices. So I think that's been that's helpful.
Well, even with that, Lawrence, we set up district events. So summer of 2019, our district office set up a census roundtable in preparation of the 2020 census, where community stakeholders came and we spoke about what was ready, what wasn't ready, what hurdles still had to be figured out. And we had Hill staff come down for that roundtable also. Again, and that shows that the working relationship that the district office has with the Hill office to be able to collaborate for a district event, so that the congressman is fully prepared, but also that our constituents and community organizations get the full support that they need in whatever avenue.
Thank you so much. And we had so we have two more questions I think we can get to properly. So one of our students asked, what was the first thing you did after, well, she said after college, but like kind of after your education, after academia, what was kind of the very first few things that you did? She said the first thing, but just I guess like what was your process kind of going from, I'm done with academics going into my career? Like what kind of entry level, I guess, what were your thoughts at that point at your juncture of your life?
Well, so I graduated from Christopher Newport in 2017, and then immediately after was accepted into George Mason for my master's program. But at the time, I was actually choosing between going to New York and working for now Mayor Bill de Blasio. I was offered a job with his campaign, or go get my master's and take an unpaid internship with Congressman Connolly, and I chose the latter, and luckily it paid off. So school and then working for the congressman. So I was working for the congressman and doing school full time, the full 2 years. So that was my, I guess, first step after graduating from undergrad, and then I just never left the congressman's office.
And you never will.
Stuck here forever.
So I graduated from the University of Virginia in 2010, and I also went and got my master's right away, but also at UVA. It was an accelerated master's of public policy program. So both Marlon and I have our MPPs. And but I was doing it full time. Marlon was working and getting his master's degree, so very impressive. I was just doing my master's, and then when I finished that up in 2011, at that time, I was very interested in international development, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. And so I was really trying to find a way to go abroad and work abroad. And I found this fellowship through Princeton that's called Princeton in Africa, but they also have a Princeton in Asia and a Princeton in Latin America. And so I did this Princeton in Africa fellowship, which paired me with an NGO in South Africa. So I moved to South Africa for a year and worked for that NGO called Mothers to Mothers. And they work with HIV positive moms and help them provide like peer support to other pregnant women and new mothers who are HIV positive to try to help them prevent transmission to their babies. So it's a really amazing organization. And I got to it was a fellowship, but I was sort of a jack of all trades. I did a lot of different work for them over the year, and got to live in Cape Town for a year. So it was pretty great.
Thank you. And okay, so maybe we have two, possibly we can grab these two more questions. But so one is about kind of, so one of the students asked, do you know how the states are going to get the vaccines from the government? I mean, are you guys kind of privy to kind of, what kind of talks are happening now that vaccines are kind of at least started being distributed in New York and so forth? I know that might not be your particular subject area of expertise.
Yeah, that's not in my wheelhouse, so I wouldn't want to take a swing at that.
Yeah, not really mine either. I can just say broadly that I know, the federal government financed the research and development of a COVID vaccine and pre-purchased, I think it's something like 300 million doses from various manufacturers. So that's not just the Pfizer vaccine that came out, but there are other vaccines that are under development. And so I believe that as part of that agreement of pre-purchasing doses, then the states will sort of buy them from the federal government. But exactly how that is getting carried out in the timeline, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And so with so I have, yeah, these are two really quick questions, and then we'll just do conclusion remarks. But so one is, if I think someone asked, like, in terms of news sources, can you give us like the top 3 that you both like kind of like go to on a daily basis? And then maybe Marlon knows better about this, about at least maybe that's like summer internship process that you guys have. Is that only for can like seniors in high school do it, or is it just for college students, or kind of made that process? But
so with I'll just quickly on the summer internships. High school students only can get internships through the campaign, but if you reach out to our office, we always put you in contact with our campaign who's allowed to offer that. We only take college students, and it's not only sorry, I don't want to say only college students. You have to graduate high school before we take you as an intern. So you could go to a 2-year college, a 4-year college, no college, but you just have to graduate high school before we accept you into our internship program.
And so I could put the point of contact. We could who would be the point, like in terms of the high school students like coming to you? I know you can
send them to me, and I'll send them over to the campaign. Donald and Maddie, those are the 2 over there, and I'm happy to be the bridge over there for them. And I saw someone ask about the options with college. Again, you can intern we have 2 district offices, so one in Prince William County and then one in Fairfax County. So you can intern in one of the 2 district offices, and then you can also apply to intern on the Hill. So there's 3 different offices within Congressman Connolly's office that you can apply for.
And then I can just touch on the news sources, Lawrence, if you want.
Yeah. The top 3 that you like, or yeah.
Yeah. So because Mr. Connolly reads the Washington Post cover to cover every day, I also try to read that cover to cover, because one of his favorite pastimes is to sort of quiz you on if you've actually read the paper yet today. And I've been caught on the wrong side of that before, so I try to never let that happen again. Because I have more of an international bent, I also read the New York Times pretty religiously, and Politico. I read like Politico Playbook and their various newsletters every day. But for long form pieces, which I try really hard not to just read, short daily articles, but also long form pieces, because I think you get a much more in-depth sense of issues that way. So I really like The Economist and The New Yorker for some of those longer form journalism.
Great, thank you. And yeah, we had more questions about the application, but I think we'll, send that in the email for Marlon at a later point. But yeah. I just wanted to thank you both for just taking the time to want to keep this event alive, and I think I think it was very insightful for me, hopefully insightful for the students to kind of hear a more personal aspect of how what it is to work on the Hill. And hopefully will inspire some to continue to stay active. And yeah, again, thank you both for participating. And I don't know if you guys had any final words, but I just want to at least thank you guys for that.
No, just thank you so much. Yeah. This was really enjoyable, and please feel free to keep in touch with our office, and highly encourage you to apply for internships. It's really one of the best ways to understand how Congress works, is just to be there in person, because it's really intense. There's a lot going on, and you just have to see it to believe it.
Yep, I agree with everything Molly said, as usual. But if anyone needs anything, Lawrence, please feel free to share my email, whether it's for an internship or just to ask more questions. I'm happy to answer where I can.
Okay, no, thank you, Marlon. I can see there's the interest has blown up on the especially with internship opportunities. So I'm sure I'll get questions, and I will try to I'll filter them. I'll try to minimize the traffic you get, because I know you. But thank you again for both of you. And Dimitar, did you have anything to say before we?
No, just wanted to thank you both from the bottom of our hearts. This has been very inspiring and informational. Thank you.
Thank you, and I guess have a great week, and happy holidays, at least from now.